Let's bring in Julian Epstein, Democratic strategist and former chief counsel for Democrats in the House Judiciary Committee. You've heard the tapes, Julian, and I believe I mispronounced your last name, and I apologize for that. You've heard the tapes. What's your reaction?
Well, thanks for having me on, John. This is a scandal on top of a scandal. This just demonstrates not just the narcissism of the Bidens in trying to hold on to power, the systematic lies of the entire Democratic Party, but the collusion on the part of the news media that's now trying to make a buck and pat itself on the back by belatedly covering this story. When people wonder why populism is so strong in the United States right now and why there is such a rejection to the establishment, I mean, this is why. The establishment participated massively in a lie to the American people, for which there now be a reckoning, and there should be.
Well, and the establishment includes many of your fellow Democrats. I want to play a montage of what people were saying back then about the president and his mental acuity. Listen.
I don't deny that it was a bad debate performance. That's different than whether or not the president is up to the job.
He is strong. He is strong behind doors, and he's strong when he's in front of the camera.
He is sharp, intensely probing.
It is not a cover-up. I know that is the narrative that you all want. It is not.
He has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions.
Julian, you're pointing a finger at the media, and it deserves to be pointed. But at the same time, you know, if they are listening to their sources on Capitol Hill or in the White House, you know, those people are saying, look, the guy's great. He's in great shape.
Well, John, this is the kind of thing you would expect to see in the old Soviet Union. The party en masse, all of the public officials knew Biden was not mentally competent for a second term, probably not even to finish the first term. And they were aware of that. There was extensive reporting on this in the Wall Street Journal, but they persisted in gaslighting the public. And so, yes, I think it is an indictment, certainly, of the news media, who had plenty of evidence and should have been covering this story more aggressively rather than after the election. But it's certainly also an indictment on the Democrats as well, which shows that they would go to no ends. And it hurts me to say this as a Democrat. They would go to all ends of the earth to hold on to power, even if it meant telling people that it was sunny outside when everyone could see it was raining. I mean, it was perfectly obvious in 2021 when Biden didn't understand what his generals' positions were on Afghanistan that the president wasn't mentally fit for the job. And so the lies, the gaslighting, when people knew it was just so plainly evident that Biden was not all there, is astounding to me. This is a major scandal.
One of the people doing some gaslighting was over on CNN, Joe Scarborough. Listen to what he had to say.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. Not a close second. If it weren't the truth, I wouldn't say it.
Well, he says best Biden ever, so I guess, you know, that leaves room for comparisons. But and I should also apologize to CNN because he's on MSNBC. But at any rate, there were a lot of people saying he was just fine.
Yes, if the White House was the Politburo, the news media was Pravda, the old Soviet propaganda machine. So, yes, I mean, but the astounding thing, John, also was that when anybody would point this out, when people would go on Jake Tapper's show, for example, and say Biden was not mentally fit, when Robert Hur provided that report that had those extraordinary incidents of Biden's memory lapses that your reporter just reported on, they were viciously attacked. The Wall Street Journal did a report with 50 insiders inside the Biden administration, and White House Democratic officials came out and viciously attacked the Wall Street Journal and anyone that laid claim to this, that tried to point out how extensively Biden's decline was. So it was again, the kind of thing that I think you would see in the old Soviet Union or in a communist regime, where the establishment, together with a state media, just doubles down on something that everyone knows is not true. And that's why people have lost so much faith in the news media, and why the Democratic Party's reputation right now, approval rating, is in the mid-20s.
George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley writes this on FoxNews.com. He says the real indictment that comes out of these tapes is a type of political racketeering enterprise by the Washington establishment. It took a total team effort from the Democratic politicians to the White House staff to the media. He goes on to say, to hide the fact that the President of the United States was mentally diminished, if there were a political RICO crime, half of Washington would be frog marched to the nearest federal courthouse. A political RICO crime. Maybe Congress should establish that kind of a law. Julian, what do you think?
I mean, I think he's saying that somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but his basic point is correct. And I like the flowery language that he uses. It does make the point that this was a massive conspiracy that involved not just the Democratic establishment, but a press that was willing to collude, mostly, John, because the mainstream media was in the tank for Biden. They were trying. They are left-leaning. I say this again as a Democrat, regretfully. They are left-leaning, and they were willing to do anything to make sure Trump didn't get reelected. This is shameful, and this is a scandal. There's no question.
It's unfortunate when the media start taking sides. Julian Epstein, it's good to have you on. Good to talk to you.
John, thanks for having me.
You bet.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.